president had a call with all of the major leagues. I believe it was yesterday.
The president
of the United States of America, and
all 50 states,
all 50. No, just I think the 4 leagues. Not all. Yeah, but he is the. He is the president of those 2.
Yes.
13 league commissioners. So we have.
Oh wow! I didn't know it was that many.
I didn't either.
Yeah, the dodgeball league is really coming up.
Gary Bettman, National Hockey League. Kathy Engelbert, Commissioner Women's. WNBA. Don Garber, Major League Soccer. Roger Goodell, National Football League. Rob Manfred, Major League Baseball. Vince McMahon, WWE.
Of course.
Jay Monahan. By the way, the WWE wasn't WrestleMania last night?
No, next weekend.
Oh, it's next weekend. Okay.
Yeah,
I thought last night was night 1.
Oh, is it this weekend?
I think it is. Yeah.
Oh shit!
Wow. I must have missed
Yeah,
it.
it's supposed
I was
to
like,
be
we
2
should do a
nights,
breakdown.
right?
I don't even know who the characters are anymore.
I didn't even have the right night.
I keep an eye on the viewership numbers for the stream, and I kept going, I wish there were more people. And my wife goes, well, WrestleMania. So
tonight at 7.
There you
Second
go.
half. I missed night 1. Damn it.
Dana White, UFC. Adam Silver, NBA. Roger Penske, IndyCar. Michael Wan, Commissioner of the LPGA. And they put Vince McMahon in there twice, both of the WWE. So that's weird.
12.
And Drew Fleming of the Breeders' Cup. So that is actually, yeah.
Oh, thank you for that.
Yes, Breeders'
I'm
Cup
like
horse.
curling horses, definitely horses.
So the best comment on that is Vince McMahon was so keen to have the WWE involved that he dialed them twice. Anyway, sorry. The thing is that literally afterwards, the funny part about this is they wanted to, according to the NFL's Ian Rappaport, the plan was to discuss charitable contributions and how the leagues will help those dealing with coronavirus. California Governor Gavin Newsom told reporters that he doesn't anticipate sports being played with fans in the stands by September in his state, contrary to Trump's reported comments. So, there's an opportunity. I think there's for sure going to be sports games before there are fans in the stadiums, right? And I think it could be a pretty long time. Mm-hmm. Until there is a vaccine, I don't know how you responsibly put fans in there. I just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're
Adam, what if you just have, a hunch?
Well, no, I'm not.
What about that? You don't follow that?
I'm not getting into that. But what I will say is, if you're in public health, how do you recommend anything else? And I don't know the answer to that. Maybe there's someone in public health who listens to this show who could say, well, actually, here's how you do it. And here's how you, but we all know that the isolation right now is to flatten the curve, right? Mm-hmm. We know that once we are slowly allowed back out and into normal life, and it will happen in stages.
Yeah, it seems to be working here.
It seems to be working here. It seems to be working in California. We know that there will still be risk to certain people. We know that nursing homes, there's one I believe in Bracebridge right now that's had an outbreak. And
Bob Cajun.
And it's been tragic. We know that stuff, unfortunately, is going to continue to happen. So my question is, yes, you're allowed to, you can use public parks again. You can use things again. I think that access to seniors' homes are going to be severely restricted for at least a couple of years until they get this thing under control.
Next week is my grandfather's 95th birthday.
Dude, wow, really?
Happy birthday to him.
Happy birthday. That's amazing.
Yeah.
And we're going to have a Zoom call with him.
Great.
And he's going to have no idea what the hell is going on, but but at least we'll get to see him.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that I think is going to, it's the unfortunate part because it's those people that need social contact the most who are going to have to be isolated.
Yeah.
And
by September, it still probably will be irresponsible of any government or business to put 20,000 people in one place at a time. And in the NFL's case, 50,000 people. It still probably won't be a good thing to allow that number of people into one building. So I don't see how it comes back.
This is going to affect us, even if this is solved, by Halloween, let's say, it's going to affect us for 2 years. Yeah. Just playing catch up as a society.
Yeah. Totally.
The school year, the sports leagues, everything.
Yep. So what I think is going to happen here is these leagues are going to play. I just don't think there's going to be anyone in the stadium.
They were experimenting with it with the Chinese Basketball League, and they had to call it off because they had a mini bit of a re-outbreak within it, and they're worried about the testing kits, because you have to test every single player every single time they go into or onto the court or onto the ice or whatever. So you have to be testing them all the time, and they can't take away that many testing kits at a time from society. That's the first problem with isolated games, because you still have to be testing these people. And then the second one is they tried other methods of testing, like it was temperature based. So if your temperature reaches a certain height, then you can't go out onto the field of play. And then that was still, they couldn't get to a percent where it was accurate enough to allow it. So there's still complications.
And what if you're asymptomatic?
Exactly. So there's still complications doing isolated games.
Yeah, guys, I, as someone who works in sports and depends on sports for a living, we can go without this for a little bit, guys.
Yeah.
I can go without this.
I'll tell you, though, I do think it'll be back by September. I really do. I just don't think anybody will be allowed in the stadium. And I think the reason for that is at that point, you're probably past, in a lot of cases, and I hope this is the case, the modeling has shown, from what I've seen, that they'll be past the big scary mountain thick part, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The big whoosh. And so it will be manageable. It doesn't make it fun. It doesn't make it safe, but it's manageable for the hospital system, which is the key. So if you can get it to that point and you have testing kits that are then being produced at a number which would be far higher than they are today, because there's a lot of factories and things being mobilized to do so.
That's the key in this whole thing.
Right.
Yeah.
If you get the production levels up to a point where everybody actually can get a test and they can test them more than once, then you could conceivably play. And you could bet that these leagues with all this money on the line and these billionaires going, oh, I'm losing money. And billionaires don't like losing money. I don't know if you've heard that. I would almost guarantee that they will do everything they can to find that. Now, you say, well, like, and again, a lot of people don't want to have the conversation or even talk about it right now. I think it's a conversation worth having. What are the conditions under which this is acceptable, right? And I think it has to be what Jesse just said there is such an important point. If you are taking tests away from society at large,
general population,
because there aren't enough tests, and there are not enough tests yet, then, and like Ontario's had to clear a backlog, and our testing is low. The states don't have enough. You got to make sure that there's multiple tests for everyone, and then you can go forward with this. You got to make sure there's enough ventilators for everyone, and then you can go forward with this. You got to make sure that you've got the manufacturing power to sustain this. The same way that you can sustain a player breaking 2 or 3 sticks a game, you need that for ventilators and tests and things like that. Yeah. You need it to get to that level. Once they're at that level, though, I could see it where it's possible to play those games.
Even ventilators feels like a step far too gone. Like you can't return to sports arenas until it's not just we have the infrastructure to handle people getting sick. It's got to be at a point where people are no longer getting sick from this because we've prevented it.
Well, I don't think that's going to be the case, Steve.
Yeah,
I don't think that'll be the case. And I think it's going to be
on Friday, the Canadian government said it's going to be a 2-year issue.
Yeah.
That was their prediction. Yeah.
Now that doesn't mean isolation for 2 years, because you can't. Yes. The economies can't function that long like this. And people will. You're talking about in the States alone, 30 or 40 million people out of work. That's just not sustainable.
Like all at once.
Yeah, all at once.
Yeah.
No, they already are. It's like right now. So that's not a sustainable thing. So what do you do? And I think what it is that had we been more prepared, you look at the way the South Koreans handled it. They're a great example. They had enough tests. They tested everybody, and they haven't had to go into social isolation. They haven't had the lockdown measures that Italy had. I think Iran had some pretty intense measures that New York is going through right now. They don't have the influx of new cases every single day that New York's going through. That's the key, right? It's having there are things that make their way through society all the time. The H1N1s and the viruses and all that. It's none of them ever overwhelm the hospital systems around the world all at once. That's the problem. And obviously, people dying at the rate they're dying.
But is it a hoax?
Well,
Steve.
it was a liberal
Sorry.
hoax from a couple weeks ago. But don't get into that. Let's not go there.
Adam, we got to ask the question. We got to ask the question.
We read out there was an Instagram post from Evangeline Lilly, who you would know from Lost, and she's in the Marvel movies and stuff like that. And she said our first week in isolation, we were talking about this on Virgin Radio, and what did she say? She said she took a picture of like a teacup that she was drinking out of, and she's like, just having my morning tea. Dropped my kids at gymnastics camp or something, and like it's every election year there's something, and I was like, what? And she said, and I'm not going to let my personal freedoms get locked down by a government or whatever it was. And funny thing is, I'm pretty sure she's Canadian, so it was sort of odd to me. But beyond that, she came out and apologized for it later. But it just goes to show.
No, fuck you, Evangeline. You meant that shit. Fuck you. Don't apologize for it. I don't accept it. You meant that shit.
Well, yeah.
Keep it to yourself next time,
Oftentimes
asshole.
people do.
I don't care if you still think it. I know you still think it because you're a dumb fuck. But keep it to yourself next time. Yes, Adam?
Well, isn't it interesting that Deadline, I think, was reporting, Deadline's like the insider on a lot of movies. Deadline was reporting that her role was going to be really reduced in the new Marvel movies because they were so worried about her public perception after that one Instagram post.
Enjoy that shit sandwich, dummy.